Well, in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to avoid three debt traps, ways to avoid those three debt traps, and we're also going to talk about the CPI numbers and how it impacts people's cash flow. So, why don't we get started? Ryan, today we're going to start off. We have a few things we're going to talk about.
Yep.
As I mentioned, three debt traps, how to avoid them, and the CPI numbers. But why don't we start with the CPI numbers and some of the recent data that came out, and maybe we can start off with explaining what is CPI. So, would you
Yes.
like to take over there?
Yeah. Well, CPI is Consumer Price Index, and that gives people an indication and it helps measure inflation. So, obviously,
Mhm.
with today's changing prices in consumer goods, we're feeling it more than ever. And of course, Stats Canada has come out back in July and June and said that, in July, inflation was up to 8.5%, which was down from what June had reported at 9.1. So we're feeling the effect because our dollar isn't stretching as much as it used to. Going to the grocery store, a year ago I was buying 36 eggs for $7.99, and now I'm buying them for $9.29. So
Right.
just a small example, which is exactly what everybody faces, right? As we work through it, and how, as we walk through today's episode, how we can help in supporting people in taking some control of the things that they're facing, as we all are. So
Yeah, and I mean the numbers have definitely dropped from peak.
yeah.
I believe the most recent number a couple of days ago came at about 3.8%. Prior
Mm.
month was about 4. So they have come down, but things are still very expensive.
Yeah.
You ask anyone to your point who go to a grocery store. Like I don't do grocery store shopping. Carol does,
Mm.
um, but I do hear how expensive things are, and I hear from other individuals. So things are costly, and why this is a problem as we talk about cash flow planning is when you have a household who has a fixed income, and many people are living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm.
So the CPI increase doesn't impact everybody necessarily the same way. So for a family or an individual who had disposable income before inflation went up, they might have less disposable income.
Mm.
So it doesn't really impact them the same as, for example, a young family who they didn't really have disposable income to begin with, and now their basic necessities have gone up in cost.
Yeah.
4, 5, 10%. They're the ones that are really impacted right now because of the recent increases. And there's a bit of a vicious cycle
Yeah.
that I'm finding too with the increases, because you have a lot of employees who are now going to their employers, the businesses, and they're demanding salary increases
Mm.
because the price of goods is going up. You need money to be able to afford those necessities. So now individuals are going to their employers demanding an increase in pay so they can cover these expenses, these increased expenses.
Mm.
A lot of the businesses, many of them are not in a position to potentially offer increased salary because it's an increased cost of the business. I'm definitely hearing a lot more now than ever, many strike votes and groups going on strike,
Yeah.
and that has an impact. And I'm not. This isn't a political discussion. I'm not making this political at all. This is just more reality and kind of what we're seeing right now. But the bottom line is, eventually, the employers of the businesses will come to an agreement for an increase in pay, and what that has done now has increased the business's expenses. And who do you think those increased costs gets passed on to?
Yeah.
The business is not going to absorb it.
Yeah.
They're passing it on to the consumer. So now all of a sudden
The
the
same
the costs
cycle.
go up, and
Yeah.
it's the same cycle. I'll even use my brother as an example. So he owns a grocery store,
Mm.
and I remember when there was the first major increase with minimum wage. So I
Yeah.
asked him. I said, how does this impact your bottom line, or what increase labor costs? What's the number? And he said, at the time it was about $250,000 increase in his labor costs for his one store.
Mm.
So then I asked him, well, how does that impact your bottom line? And he said, well, it really doesn't impact my bottom line because that increase of 250,000 is just going to get passed on to the consumers. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
be increasing pricing on produce and food,
Yeah.
there really is no impact. So it is a bit of a vicious cycle. So I don't know what the solution is when it comes to the inflation.
Yeah.
I think we're all hoping and praying that it comes back down to that 2%, magic threshold.
Yeah.
But we're not quite there yet, and I think there's conversations where it might not happen until about 2025.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as we see this downward trend, that should start to ease some of the pain for individuals. Anything that you want to add to that?
Well, I think part of this conversation is really about helping people prevent themselves from maybe just going to the easy, which is credit cards, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it is an ongoing cycle that happens with businesses and passing it on. So as far as that goes, I think, for us, setting people up for success is really talking about the issue and maybe providing a few tips that may help them along the way when it comes to their cash flow, and making sure they're not taking advantage of some of the things that obviously happens. And one of those things is obviously creating a debt trap for
Mm,
yourself, right?
yeah.
And getting into a place where you're using your credit card more than you normally would, and how you can, you know, get out of that cycle of abusing a credit card, but also at the same time taking advantage of it, because for a lot of people it can be a great way to increase their credit score, and by continuing to have a healthy credit score, it will help them down the road when it comes to applying for mortgages or loans, taking advantage of interest rates if you need to buy a car, things like that. So I think one of the first things that people get into is obviously the debt trap, right, and abusing credit cards. So
So what you're saying is that is one of the first three debt traps we're going to talk about
that's
is
correct.
abusing credit cards.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Okay. Just to be clear, so people can understand what we're referring to. So, number one debt trap:
yeah,
abusing credit cards.
yeah,
And there are people who do abuse credit cards.
yeah.
I think there are people who believe that credit cards are bad no matter what, and credit cards are not bad. They're a great tool if used properly and responsibly, but it's definitely a trap in the sense of that's probably the one debt that consumers will have
Mm-hmm.
that can easily and quickly get out of control.
That's right.
Part of it is because it's a revolving credit.
Yeah,
The other part of it is the high interest cost, right? Well over 20% on all of those credit cards.
yeah,
So really, people have to be mindful of how they use their credit cards.
mm-hmm.
And right now, some of I don't even want to call it abuse right now. It seems to be more of a necessity, but there are
Mm-hmm.
people who are literally taking cash advances from their credit cards to make their next mortgage payment
Yeah,
because they were stuck in a variable rate mortgage and the payment is adjustable. So it's increased significantly over the last 12 plus months.
mm-hmm.
And they're racking up their credit card debt. So we can call it abuse. We can also say that I think right now it's a bit of a necessity, but it's just kind of kicking the problem down the road.
Yeah,
So credit card's a big one.
yeah,
We have to be mindful of it. And in terms of having a credit card, if you want it to positively impact your credit bureau or not negatively impact it,
mm-hmm.
one of the recommendations is to try to keep the balance below 35% of your available credit. So, as an example,
Yeah,
if you have an available credit of $10,000, try not to carry more than $3,500 balance on the credit card, and that'll keep your credit in check
yeah,
for the most part. Obviously, also making payments,
Yeah.
Another one too is not just making the minimum payment on a credit, even if it's $5 more than what the minimum is, that also has a positive impact on your credit history as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, right, anything you want to add to abusing credit cards and how that is, you know, probably the number one debt trap right now that people
Yeah.
are dealing with?
Well, uh, two client calls that I've had in the last week have been about this subject, and really, again, for some people listening, they don't know how the credit rating works. They don't know how to maintain their score, bring their score higher or lower, hopefully higher. And these small things are the things that will help them in the longer run.
Mhm.
And also creating a new habit and being able, it's a great teaching moment for children, right? So for
Mhm.
younger kids, teens, I've even seen parents put their children on their credit card just to help them build up some credit, especially when they're, 15, 16, 17,
Mhm.
to allow them the opportunity to build that credit score too.
Yeah.
Because it surprisingly does have a very large impact on the next time you go for a loan and the rate that you get. Because businesses, they always want to see your ability to pay back what you're borrowing, right? So,
They want
and
to see history.
that's the next part, which is the history, right? What
Yeah.
is your history on this borrowing pattern that you have? And it makes believe me, it makes a huge difference. When I got my first mortgage, it made a huge difference compared to some of my friends that had gone to get mortgages, and the rates that I got. And you know in this day and age, when mortgage rates are higher, every little point counts, right? To get a lower amount. So
Yeah. I'll share a funny story. So, when I first started in banking, I worked in a small trust company in a farming community.
mm,
And there was a 65-year-old farmer who was looking to buy himself a brand new Cadillac. And he had, I believe at the time, like $500,000 in his bank account.
yeah,
And he was going to spend $60,000 at the time to buy this brand new Cadillac. And his family kept saying to him, "Why are you using your money from your bank account? Just get a car loan. Do it as a car loan."
hmm
Now, 65 years old, never had a credit card, always paid everything for cash,
hmm
never had a mortgage. He inherited the farm from his family. Went to apply for a car loan and got declined. Not because he didn't have capacity. And again, this is 30 years ago. I'm not sure what the rules are today, but I think they're very similar. He just never had credit history.
hmm
So no one was willing to lend him $60,000 to buy a brand new or a Cadillac. So at the end of the day, he just took the money from his account and paid it cash.
yeah,
And I had a recent conversation with some clients of mine who are older clients, and they had asked me they have a credit card that they've owned for 20 years with one of the major banks, but they haven't used it in like 15.
yeah,
So they'd asked me, should I just cancel the account because we never use it?
hmm
And I suggested no, actually keep it active because that 20-year history has a far better impact on their credit score
hmm
and their credit history than a recent credit card.
yeah,
So just keep it active, even if you charge $50 a year on it just to make sure that it's still active.
hmm
That history is what a lot of the lenders are looking for. And to your point, I mean, it's one of the reasons now my daughter, who just started university, she was offered a credit card, as a student without a job, was given $1,000 limit. Now, thankfully, her father is a financial advisor, so I'm teaching her on how to use a credit card responsibly and when to use it and when to pay it and all those things. But a lot of people don't have that.
yeah,
They're kind of figuring it out. Like when I first got a credit card, I was 18 years old with a $500 limit. I didn't have anyone to teach me how to properly use a credit card, and I got myself in trouble at a very young age.
yeah.
So we definitely need to offer more education.
And kids coming out of university too are being offered very large sums of of opportunity of 5, 10. I've seen recent graduate get a $30,000 credit card offer, and I very much say stay away from those large amounts because it can get carried away very quickly. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
encouraging people to talk to the right people to make sure that that amount is the right amount, just simply to help you collect points to fly away somewhere, but at the same
Yeah.
time that you're paying it off and that you can afford what you're buying. So, which
Yeah.
kind of leads to the second debt trap that often
Well,
people.
before we get to that, I actually just want to share one more example, and then we'll get to the
Yep.
second debt trap. John, my partner John at TVH Mortgages, for years he has helped people, refinance their debt. Many people got themselves into trouble again with their credit cards and whatever else. So he would do a refinance, clear everything up,
Mm-hmm.
free up cash flow for them. And then the clients, and this happened on more than one occasion, they would go into the bank to sign the mortgage agreement,
Mm-hmm.
and guess what they were being presented with? A new
Right.
credit card,
New credit card, likely. Yep.
right? And they would call us and they say, we just canceled all our credit cards.
Yeah.
We got ourselves in trouble because of credit cards. We cleaned everything up, yet we're being offered a $20,000 credit card. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And usually our response was, you have a credit card which you've maintained.
Yeah.
We've asked you to lower the limit on it so you don't get yourself in trouble. Decline the offer.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, many times people would still accept the offer. 5 years later, guess what? They were back in that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
not able to manage their debt and back to looking at refinancing their debt again.
Yeah.
So we definitely, we offer advice. We try to guide people through these situations.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, people also have to kind of follow through with recommendations and
And,
do their
yeah.
part.
Walk away from temptation. Again, banks have a very good job of wanting to keep people in debt, and we want to ensure that people are taking the right steps to be able to achieve their goals instead of being kind of locked into what what the banking system has kind of created for a lot of people. So,
You
yeah.
you think the banks really want people to be in debt? The banks are happy collecting 22% interest on money that they've lent out.
Yeah,
Oh.
very much so.
All right.
So,
Well, why don't you lead us into the second debt trap then?
well, the second debt trap, like I alluded to, was about spending more than you can afford. And again, it's really important to understand what's coming in and what's going out. We're not here to create heavy budgets for people, but just understanding, what is coming in as far as your income and what is being put out. And I get caught in the value villages and the dollar-ramas quite often, and before you know it, you've spent much more than just simply a dollar.
Mm.
They should rename it the $100 store, because that's what you seem to walk out of every time you go into the dollar store. So, there's the importance of creating a cash flow plan.
Mm.
And Jim, you obviously can create some great scenarios for people that have helped, that you've helped, and even myself helped in helping people support and understand that. So,
Yeah, it's again, it's the discussion about awareness. So
mm-hmm.
there are many people who don't really track their income and their expenses. They just see money coming in, money going out, and then they don't understand why there's nothing left at the end of the month,
Mm-hmm.
or why their debt is slowly increasing, their revolving debt.
Yeah.
So, some of the work that we've done recently, with me getting my certified cash flow specialist designation,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm, working with some clients specifically on behavioral cash flow planning. And it's amazing, when you start to input all the information, or I ask someone to start gathering the information,
Mm-hmm.
they have that holy moly kind of reaction, didn't realize I was spending so much money on X. And again, our process isn't about deprivation. Our process isn't about saying stop buying your coffee or stop, eating out or enjoying life. Really, it's just adjusting the spending behavior,
Yeah.
and that takes a bit of time.
Hmm.
But part of the process is to really have a clear understanding of where your funds are going, what your monthly committed expenses are.
Yeah.
And the committed expenses, those are, again, non emotional. They're not really risky in the sense of you can't really overspend. Like your hydro bill is your hydro bill, your cell phone bill is your cell phone bill. Where there's the risk in terms of overspending is on the spendable side of the equation,
Yeah.
right? And those are more emotional expenses, not really tracked in any way. So you eat out somewhere, and that's an area that I've seen a significant increase in cost too as we go back to CPI numbers. But that can get out of hand if you don't track it. So to have a spendable amount for the week
Hmm.
for all of your spendable expenses and kind of staying within that range will help find money to be able to put you in a better situation in the future,
Yeah.
i.e., paying down some of your revolving debt. So that's definitely an area that we can and have been helping people with recently is just the awareness of where their money is going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We can't hammer home enough is simply being aware where your money is going will give you some great insight as to how you can support yourself and your own goals, your family's goals when it comes to what you want to do in the longer term,
Mm-hmm.
versus being handcuffed to, having to pay your credit card debt down constantly, and just over time it being able to add up. And that, what was it, the latest is, most Canadians are $200 to $500 away from being
Mm-hmm.
completely broke if a major event happened,
Yeah.
that they wouldn't be able to. And again, they would be relying on, you know credit card or loans and things like that. And we want to break this habit. We want to break the habit of
Mm-hmm.
people constantly struggling to make the next payment because they're finding money from other places. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, again, it's us helping support you and and creating a new habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So creating change. So
Yeah. And that'll take some time, and
yeah,
it does take a bit of work.
yeah,
The good news is, people don't have to do it by themselves.
yeah,
We can help them with the process based on our experience, based on our education, based on the program that we have to offer. We have the educational component as well. We'll get to that at some point.
yeah,
But yeah, there is hope, and even though I say that there's hope, we can't necessarily help everyone.
hmm,
But a good starting point is let's start collecting the data and let's see if we can help you,
yeah,
find ways to help you. So
yeah,
So I think this kind of leads to the third debt trap, which is not having an emergency fund.
yeah,
And I think this is somewhat controversial in a sense of different people believe you should have, different amounts set aside as an emergency fund.
hmm.
Where the emergency fund is really important is, again, if you have sorry, was it Mike Tyson who says you get punched in the face? You
Everybody
know,
has everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. So
right. So you have a punch in the face scenario, financially speaking.
yeah,
How are you going to deal with it?
yeah,
All of a sudden you have a leak in your foundation, or there's a leak in the roof, or your car breaks down. There's all these scenarios. Again, another debt trap is people might just load up on their credit card to say, well, it's $5,000. I don't have $5,000, so I'm just going to put it on my credit card and pay 22%.
yeah,
That becomes very costly. So I think it's really important to have an emergency fund.
hmm,
The question is, again, how much, and for people who are struggling to save, how do they even go about building an emergency fund?
yeah,
So I know one time at another episode you'd asked me what my thoughts were in terms of how much a person should have,
yeah,
and my response was and still is something is better than nothing.
yeah,
Right? Put something away.
yeah,
It's difficult, when we try to put these plans in place to go to someone and say you need to have 6 months of your income set aside as an emergency fund.
yeah,
That's a big chunk.
Mhm.
to try to chew on, right? So what I would suggest is start small, small little bites. So first, see if you can set aside a week's worth of emergency fund, a week's salary worth of emergency fund,
Yep.
and build that out. Try 2 weeks, a month, 2 months worth. Right over time, it'll get easier. Um, so that's really my recommendation in terms of how to try to set money aside for emergencies.
Yeah.
Just do it in small chunks.
Yeah, and that small chunks for a lot of people may only be just $10 a week, right? And
Hmm.
we've said in past episodes, the pay yourself first.
Yeah,
So being able to put that aside, not having to worry about it, allow it to grow in whatever way possible, but having a secondary account is just simply for emergency fund. For some
yeah,
people, it's $10, $25 a week, or $100 a
yeah.
month, whatever is best for you and your family, and allow that to grow. High interest savings account, TFSA, have it grow, tax free, and before you know it, 2 3 years will pass by, and suddenly you've built yourself up a you know simple savings account, and you have that emergency fund for if, God forbid, something happens, like a leaky roof or something happens to your car. So
Mhm.
you don't feel the pain as much in your pocket because you've put it aside, right? So,
Well, it's the forced saving strategy.
yeah,
Um, it needs to be automated as well.
yeah,
So it can't be a manual process where you're manually making a contribution in your savings account. You need to set it up as an automated process.
yeah,
And you might feel the pain after, the first month, 2 months, because you're putting aside the $100 a month or whatever that number is.
yeah,
But eventually you will adjust and eventually it will become easier. And to your point, Ryan, eventually you'll look at, the money that's accumulating and feel really good
yeah,
about seeing an account that actually has a positive balance as opposed to a statement that has amount owing at 22%.
yeah. And
Right?
for parents too, getting your kids started on things like this early, whether it's, they get their weekly allowance, yearly allowance, gifts for birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. Teaching your kids to put away a portion of that for a goal of something that they want to purchase, and also creating their own little emergency fund, and that way you're creating a habit
Mhm.
for younger people, so they know. Because again, as much as I've seen the latest on what they're teaching kids in school, and it's still, these simple basic things still aren't being taught properly
Mm.
for kids. And you know being able to put off buying something, self or quick gratification,
Mhm.
being able to put them off until a later date, or to really think through whether that was an important purchase. So
Yeah.
these all have an effect of creating great habits at a younger age. Because I know for myself, and I'm sure you yourself, Jim, you don't ever want to see your kids struggle with
Yeah.
understanding money
Yeah.
and money in the future. So help them create those habits now, and especially for the people coming out of university right now, it's a great habit to create, and will have everlasting impact. So
Yeah, it's amazing how young adults coming out of university can run circles around us when it comes to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and even ETFs, but they have no idea about debt and
yeah,
how debt works and the impact of debt.
yeah,
So even in universities, my understanding is from recently touring a bunch of universities with my daughter,
hmm,
they have programs or clubs that talk about investing and
hmm,
teach people about investing. They don't talk to them about debt management
yeah,
and spending.
yeah,
And one of the dangers too in spending, and I think it's a little bit different with the younger generation than with our generation or even the older generation, because the older generation and even ours at one point, we worked with cash.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had physical cash. So we knew if we had $100 in our pocket, that's what we had for the week, for example. The problem is we're in a tap society now,
Yeah.
right? So the younger generation coming in who've never really managed cash, never had to work with cash because everything has been tap, 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 tap. Again, it's easy for people to kind of get their spending out of control because even trying to do the mental math of how
Yeah.
much they've spent through tap, they never get it right.
Yeah.
So that's another danger. So let's talk a little bit then about the new offering that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you and I together have partnered up, and we're now offering through TVH Cash Flow Solutions behavioral cash flow planning.
Mm-hmm.
And this service really helps people in many ways. First, from again an awareness point of view,
Mm-hmm.
because we are going to ask them to provide us with their expenses and their cash flow and present it to them in such a way that they can visualize it, they can see it. It's very easy.
Yeah.
Also, provide them with a way of um, providing them, I guess, an allowance for
Yeah.
spendable funds,
Mm-hmm.
so they can, they know what their weekly allowance is, and that could be used in any way they want. It's almost like Weight Watchers points, right? You're allowed X amount of points per day and per week. Just don't go over the points,
Yeah.
and you should start losing weight. In this instance, it's more like a here's your spendable amount. Just don't spend more than your spendable amount.
Yeah.
And financially speaking, we'll be able to show you the impact of making some of those adjustments.
Yeah.
So those are the couple of things. And then there's also the 12 module educational program.
Yeah.
That's also very important. That will teach them or teach people about spending habits, money, debt, why budgets maybe are appropriate in certain circumstances,
Yeah.
but not really for what we're trying to help our clients with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The key thing is that it, as you said, it was behavior based, right?
Mm,
Creating and understanding your behavior helps change your mindset and create a new habit. And through that constant work, again, it's going to be a little bit of work, but again, it's creating an everlasting impact on not only you, your family, your kids, your business,
mm,
and how just simply being aware and that again that tap mentality, as you said, the cha-cha slide to tap your card can make it all the difference when it comes to
mm,
seeing your cash flow and seeing what's coming in and going out and making better choices along the way. Again, accumulating like a snowball effect and then
mm.
creating a very large snowball down a big mountain full of money that you'll
Yeah,
enjoy. So, yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. So I guess really the next thing for people is if you're at all interested in working with us to avoid some of these debt traps, or if you'd like to go through a behavioral cash flow plan to see if it's even something that can potentially assist you, there's a couple of ways that you can reach out to us. So you can go to tvhcashflow.ca. So that's tvhcasflow.ca. Or you can call us at 647 727 4668. And finally, you can also email us at cashflow solutions. That's CACHEFLO solutions at tvhgroup.ca. So those are ways that you can reach out to us. We encourage you to like and share this. Share it with family members if you know anyone who's struggling financially and they're looking for some assistance and they're looking for potentially a way out. We encourage you to also share this information with them, and we'd be more than happy to assist anyone who requires our help. Ryan, any final thoughts? Any
Uh,
final statements?
Again, this is educational based and it'll help you understand the behavior and create a new mindset. And to, to be talking about finances and money has always been taboo, and encouraging people to share their struggles and to get the support that they need and the help that they need through ourselves.
Mm,
And again, our success is your success, and we really enjoy and love doing it. So,
absolutely.
no.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Ryan, until next time.
Take care.